building a scalable program, what would you say are the key pillars for building a scalable recruiting program? So I'm going to kick us off, Dorian.
All right. Well, yeah. Think I'm on? Okay. Well, one of the things that really stands out to me, first of all, thank you for having me here today. We've been talking a lot about AI all day, and I'm just thinking about the human beings behind all of this, and the people that we have to work with, and the people problems that we have to overcome. As a recruiter who's been in this field for a while, I understand the importance of an employer brand. You have to have a strong, impactful employer brand. But how many of you here today or that are watching have thought about your own personal brand? Anyone? Your personal brand as a recruiter is just as critical as your employer brand. It allows you to build confidence with the candidates that you are recruiting. It also helps you in regards to the networking that you'll need to be able to do to identify those purple squirrels and unicorns that we're all trying to uncover. But as you're doing that, it's important that you're true to who you are, and people will see that and it will resonate as you're talking to candidates. So I would advise, if you haven't already, utilize tools, and ClearanceJobs has some great opportunities for that as well, with the ClearanceJobs Live and the Cleared Network, to be able to build not only a strong employer brand, but your own brand as a recruiter, so that you can connect with people and they can connect with you as a person. And that's one thing that AI will not be able to replace, is that person-to-person connectivity.
The only thing I wanted to add before we kind of started is I think that just from this panel perspective, we have such a different view. I'm from a small company right now. I'm a department of one, so scaling is going to look different than a large company and then mid-size, would you say? So feel free to ask us questions based on your own perspective, because I think we're all going to add our own value, but you go ahead with your next statement.
No, please.
Oh, the only thing I was going to say is that from a scalable recruiting program for me is, when's the right time to add full-time employees or use other options outside of hiring people. So for me right now, we have a lot of surges and not necessarily like consistent. It's great growth for us, but it comes in waves. And so it hasn't necessarily felt right to bring on another full-time person. However, we do utilize a lot of partnerships, whether it's third party or consultants that have come to us that have really helped us approach these surges well and not have to invest from a company perspective, but also we want the right recruiter to join us that doesn't come on and feel bored. Like, we want someone that's being impactful. So we need to make it the right time. So what are those other decisions that you've made? And for us, it's utilizing other options aside from hiring full-time.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay. All right, it's working out. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here in beautiful San Diego. Kind of. Not. I would say for us, scalability, or the key pillar, is having retention programs. So it's hard to scale if you keep losing who you hire, right? So it's important that the hiring, it doesn't, I would say the recruitment doesn't stop at hiring. So it's important to know, what are we doing to retain our talent so that we can focus on hiring more, right? So knowing the benefits that our companies are offering, the professional development, we talked about upskilling, right? And talking about that to our candidates, talking about that after we bring them on board, because as you are looking at scalability, again, you want to know retention first and then recruit, right? And so it's very important that as a key pillar is that not only we look at, is it time to hire a new recruiter, or what do you have currently, the talent you have, but also what are we going to do to retain that? And that also applies to our talent, our recruiters themselves. What are we doing to retain our talent, which is recruiters? And I know you're going to ask this later on, Jill, but it's going to be important that we take care of our own people too, and that could mean a lot of things, right? From a professional level, we tend to take care of others when it comes to HR, but we need to take care of ourselves too.
Yeah. So what would you say would be one of the biggest challenges you've encountered in building your scalable recruiting program? Could be at a different organization you've been at or where you're at currently, just in the years of experience that you've had, something that you've really come up against in the cleared recruiting space.
Yeah, so right now, I would say when we're recruiting for talent and our hiring managers, I think it was shared earlier, are asking for a mix of skills that are really more than one job and into one person. As we're recruiting for this talent, oftentimes the salary expectations may not be in alignment based on what the hiring managers are looking to hire for in that level. So as it's hard enough with a small pool, which for us is not even a pool, it's like a drip at this point. So the drip of talent that we're trying to identify. Once you find someone, you get excited. Recruiters are like high-fiving, I finally found someone. Get them in front of the hiring manager, they interview great, and then there's a misalignment with the compensation based on the level of the person. So then you have to find a way to partner with your leadership team and then analyzing the leveling to see if you can find a way to hire that person on board. So it's complex because the talent pool is already a challenge for us as recruiters. And then you find that great candidate that wants $300,000 and they're 5 years out of school. And yet, like this person can do the job. And so as a recruiter, and back to what Raman said about taking care of our own, working together with our recruiting teams to be able to devise a solution for those types of scenarios, that's been a real challenge for us. Another one I wanted to point out is Silicon Valley, because I've been in this field for 20 plus years, and it was maybe over the past 15-ish years where you're not just competing with large defense contractors or government integrators, you're competing with the world. The world is flat. So you're in Virginia competing with people in San Diego and beyond. And Silicon Valley has come into our space with lots of money to be able to draw talent away. So the competition is even greater. So I know I'm talking a lot about money and salaries, but that is a significant factor for us in recruiting.
So I'm going to add to that. One of our challenges now is I think we've been talking about skill-based hiring, right? It sounds wonderful. It sounds, I know our panels talked about it before, the education requirements, and lately for last few years, it's about upskilling. All of that sounds wonderful. We have a candidate pool that's ready to go, but the challenge is, are our customers ready to accept those? And but before we even go to our customer, let's just stay within our own homes or our company. Our own managers are not willing to accept those candidates, right? So the mentality is still, the culture is still, certain number of years of experience, bachelor's degree, not only bachelor's degree, but electrical engineering degree with such and such, the certification, right? So, as we start to look at our talent and we are bringing that talent, and we're the one, I know, Tommy, you said we're salespeople. We are, right? So we are selling that skill-based talent to our program manager, helping them understand and that's where we're going. Think about our workforce, the newer generation that's coming in. They're already talented, right? I mean, I'm probably the slowest one in my family right now, but with the technology that they're using in high school, in middle school, right? So convincing our program manager, and once you convince them, then I know we talked about earlier too, having a relationship with the customer so that we can go to them and get a waiver. But one waiver at a time isn't going to work, right? This is a culture change that we have. So that's a big challenge that we see in front of us, is that we as a recruiting talent acquisition team can build that pipeline, but what happens afterwards?
And I think that while there is a drip of talent right now, the perception is with Doge, there is a huge influx of talent, but is it the right talent? Does it match everything? And then also with that, what we've seen in recent years within the government contracting space, and maybe just forever, is the aggressive bidding and pricing of these contracts. So not only do we the salary match, right? Like $300K, but really we could pay you 90. So we've got a big gap to make up here. So I would say that right now, from a company perspective, at least for is like there should be an influx of talent. And while there may be, it's not necessarily one-to-one. It doesn't match. And I will say that from a small company perspective and having everyone a part of the hiring process, the good part of that is that we sometimes do flex a little bit more where skills are not 100% aligned. And I really appreciate that from having been at different companies, different sizes, that we're willing to flex with the talent. And if it doesn't work out, we have the opportunity to replace them, right? So, but flex and be flexible. And that way we can put more people, especially right now, into these roles that aren't like, square, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. Oh, thanks. One more thought is that when we're recruiting people, we often think about bringing someone into our company to be there for the next X amount of years. As a recruiter and as a hiring manager, you have a number in your mind. And we're in a market today where candidates don't have that same number in mind. So you might be thinking, we're going to hire this person and we have a career path for the next 10 years, 15 years. Meanwhile, the candidate is thinking, if I get 4 or 5 years with this company, that's a great run. And so we have to, not only from a recruiting and a talent acquisition standpoint, but as a business, think about how are we going to develop career paths to keep people engaged and challenged and where they can grow over the next 5 to 10 years, because whether they're Gen X or millennial, whatever generation they are, they may not be thinking of the same way that we are. And so it goes back to that retention. So now that candidate that you recruited in 2020, you're in 2025 having to backfill that candidate because we are not able to sustain. So we're looking for ways to develop and grow our teammates so that they can continue to live with us longer in their employment.
Yeah, I mean, job hopping is pretty prevalent in the cleared space, obviously, and that's a double-edged sword where there's opportunity for you to hire somebody who wants to jump ship. That's also, you deal with the same reality for you. And I mean, the compensation report's there, but every year, compensation is one of the biggest factors for candidate satisfaction of where they're at and whether or not they want to jump ship. So it is a thing. And even with a lot of the changes that are happening right now in government, Kelly, I think you're right in that there can be easily that shift of we're going to take lowest bid, technically acceptable, anything like that that's going to make it through. So that makes it even a tighter market and harder for you to recruit for that. So let's chat industry changes. Speaking of industry changes, just adapting to that, especially in light of everything that's been happening real time here. So, but I think it's also good, it's easy to look at everything that's happening right now and think this is, we've never seen things like this before, but you've been in the space for a bit of time and you have the depth of experience. So how have you seen recruiting in this cleared space evolve, even over the last decade, and even using that history sometimes, can help you going forward? Where do you see that going forward as well?
I think that technology in any way, shape, or form, as progressive as AI, as progressive as, the job boards and the ATSs and everything that we utilize, they keep up with it. You can't not talk about that, right? Right now, there is truly an influx in some cases of applicants because of the recent reduction in force and different things. And so the tools that are able to help you filter through that more effectively, I think that that's huge right now. Again, recruiting department of one. So when we have a lot of these surges, those things that, especially if you have confidence in them and the technology behind it, it does help you because it's taking out like that extra review, that extra time that you could be actually talking to a candidate, so I think that those things are huge. And I think that that's a plus to us as recruiters, not a replacement, I guess is what I do not believe it truly replaces things, but I think it replaces a thing. So
I'm gonna say that the recruiting has evolved from a point of view that we have now become a strategic function, right? It is no longer focused on go fill a rec or a job. I think we have become, and thanks to technology, right? It's giving us the ability to look at data, predictive analysis, right? It's giving us the story. Tommy, you talked about the work, looking at different steps, right? So we're more strategic function, which is giving us the advantage to be looking at some of the strategic outreach or the sourcing that we're doing, right? I will say that we are very focused on internal mobility now, and that's evolving, right? I don't know if there was ever a time where we say, yeah, let this person walk out and we'll be okay, perhaps, but now it's more important than ever. So, I will say we're evolving where we're becoming more internal recruiters, and we definitely need external recruiters too to go out there, but the evolution is that, again, going back to how do we keep what we have? And you're absolutely right. No one wants to stay with the same program for 10 years, 20 years, but we as a company owe it to our employees to have them go through their career journey within the company. And some companies have that opportunity, right? We're lucky at Leidos that we do have opportunities where employees can go from one program to another. And believe me, our managers still don't want to leave that. They're still hoarding their candidates or their talent. And again, it goes back to the cultural change. It's not your talent, it's company's talent. We'll rather see you moving from this program to this program versus leaving, right? So it's an evolution of how we are now internal recruiter focus has changed. Again, what I said earlier, so that we can focus on bringing in truly the new talent and not really backfills and replacements.
So one of the things that I was thinking about is where do we, as recruiters, where do we spend most of our time? And my top two are sourcing and screening. When it comes to screening, how many of you today during this conference have used technology to take notes today? Anybody? A few? So I reached a point where I use technology to take notes for me because I've found that one, I miss out on some things when I'm having conversations. Two, when you're talking to engineers and developers, things can go over your head and you lose. And it's like, I really don't know what you just said, but if I could have caught that. So I would strongly advise, if you haven't considered using technology to help you in your screening candidates, there's a lot of great tools out there for that. One of the tools that we've used is Otter, and also Google has a great tool for recording your screening sessions with candidates. And another one that came to mind for me was years ago when Amazon was still like just a kind of a smaller Amazon, and I interviewed with them out in Seattle. They had me get on a whiteboard and write out my Boolean search. And I was like, I'm doing a whiteboard? I'm a recruiter. I shouldn't be whiteboarding. That's for engineers. And I remember that, like, they gave me the job description that says, show me your Boolean search. And so I just thought about today, like, it'd be kind of weird if you had to do that, right? Like, most of you looked at me when I said that, like, what? Write it out. There's technology for that. So a lot has changed over the years. And again, a plug for ClearanceJobs. I love the IntelliSource capability to be able to telesearch, thank you, to be able to drop my job description in there and then for it to work for me instead of me trying to write out what my Boolean search should or should not be. So technology has definitely been a strong part of how recruiting has changed and help us to do things that are repeatable faster and allow you as the human part of this to do more of the human things better.
For the record, I didn't pay him to say good things about Clearance I think this is a great conversation that came up when we got together to chat about for this talk. Ron, you had mentioned actually, recruiting being a function of overhead, and with industry changes and budgets getting tighter, what are your thoughts on the impact of budget limitations, or how do you show your value add to leadership in what you're trying to build with your program?
Yeah, as I mentioned, right, so data has given the ability to be able to be more strategic and focus on not just only the short-term pipelining, but then how do we go and build the long-term, right? So it's really, again, having the team, and I say this to my team, I want my teams to be floater. I don't want them to be specialized recruiter who are, hey, I only do this and I don't want to do that, right? So a few things. The recruiting team has to be flexible. They have to be able to do what is needed at the time. And that itself is justifying that, hey, Jill is more flexible than maybe Dorian, and guess what? Who stays and who goes, right? But it is also telling our leadership, right? So this is where leaders come in and we outline the strategy for the year. In fact, we're outlining the strategy for next 3 years as to what is the talent acquisition function looks like. And that includes intern programs. That includes, internal mobility. That includes that we're gonna be focused on sourcing or outreach, right? And some of these things, again, they're not immediate. These programs take time. We just rolled out, we should say just rolled out in my sector, the intern program. We're hiring 300 interns just alone in my sector. I can't have one person do it, right? So all of a sudden now I'm developing a program. I have a program manager who's developing this program, right? So it's in the times of when they come to you and saying, we need to cut recruiters, and you're like, wait a second, no. If you do this, which is what we do as leaders day in and out, this is what we're gonna miss out on, right? And it's also having the seat at the table. If you have a seat at the table and your leadership understands the challenges, I can guarantee you, I'm saying this, I know out loud, I can guarantee you the leaders are not gonna come to me first and saying, you gotta cut recruiting. And so I think it's going back to, earning that trust with your leadership, but also understanding as to what do we focus on? Why is the short term versus long term? And it's gotta be a combination. And that goes back to our talent, our recruiting team has to be up for that challenge. We have to invest in them for upskilling. We gotta make them just not a software developer recruiter, but an internship program manager, So it's constantly thinking about how do you make your recruiter or recruiting team marketable and flexible so that when the time comes where you're asked, you're like, nope, I have no room to let anybody go because we're working on this and here's the impact and this is the results that's gonna produce.
Yeah, I think that just to add on to what you were saying, that sometimes these indirect functions are one of the first things that you look at to go, but it's also the first one you look at when things are coming right back. And if you don't have the strategic thought process to plan for the future, you're behind. You cannot walk onto the job day one at any company, large, small, whatever, and recruit and be effective to a certain scale without this background knowledge, having the seat at the table, knowing what this program is going to support, knowing what your company's worth is. So you can't be reactive, you have to be proactive. That's a big thing for me right now, like thinking we have these contracts in the pipeline. When is it going to be the right decision for us to actually pull the trigger on multiple, probably full-time people? And what's that timeline to scale them up for what's coming down and not be reactive? Because we'll be so far behind the 8 ball if we do that. And that's the same thing if you look to let people go and then hire them after the fact because it all came back, or it all didn't actually go away. So, and that's how you lose the really good people. The good ones are the ones that look first when things get, because they're marketable. So you want to retain that, and that's a big thing. I also think that goes back to what you were talking about, like employer branding. You talked about personal branding, but your culture. So when the going gets tough, where are the cuts made? I mean, that just makes anyone nervous. So, and I think building that culture starts from people feeling confident in you as a company. So.
I was going to add just one thing is that when we're in this space, in the cleared space, one difference between being in a cleared space and maybe the commercial space is that while we are a cost center in talent acquisition, we cost the company money, we are overhead. In this space, the people who do the work that we do, who provide the services and build the products, are the ones who are generating revenue for the business. So as a recruiter in the government space or the defense contractor, you are in a revenue generating space within your business. So even though or the budget that is set aside for talent acquisition is overhead, it is a revenue generating part of the business, because if you don't get the people, you can't get the work done, you can't win the contracts, you can't deliver for the customer. So everything that we do, back to what both of these ladies have shared about the value that we bring to the business, there's a lot of value that we bring because we are generating revenue for the business.
That's a fantastic point. I think anything, we have there's always a number of like however many days you go with a position unfilled, you're actually that's money, the revenue you're losing. So you need the right tools to find cleared candidates. Not sure where you'd find them, but you also need the recruiters to be able to use that tool and keep going. But I do think also, Kelly, you brought up, I think that's a fantastic thing of planning for like workforce planning for future contracts, maybe even how you're approaching that right now, like where you're seeing things. Are you holding off on calls? Are you going forward with future plans just as is, and just it should come in? They said it's going to come in, so we're just go forward and go do, or what's your approach to that right now?
Are you saying that the government timelines are always accurate? Always on time? I think that's a constant thing. I think there's other added, obviously, current market, all the things that a lot of people are considering, but there's always that everything's pushed to the right. So this is coming, and you always want to be prepared, but to what degree? Like, how much do you prepare? How many, when you're talking about like future proposal or pipeline recruiting, how many people do you have sitting on the bench or waiting? Because that could be a never-ending timeline. We've all seen it. We've seen contract extensions. We've seen them fall through, all the things. So I think, as difficult or as different things are right now, I guess I should say, I don't think it's that uncertain to all of us that have worked in this space before, because contracts are always pushing to the right. Things are always, there wasn't enough funding, we lost this went here. So this just seems like status quo on steroids a little bit, but we'll roll with the punches and we'll all kind of figure it out, and hopefully all fare well on the other side.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think this is, and the entire day we've been talking about this is also a great opportunity for a recruiter to actually go and reach out to your candidate and expand that network, right? Just because you may not have rec load that you used to have, the type of work that we perform, the type of talent that we look for. And yes, there's also an influx of talent, but your role, I feel like or when I say your, it's because I don't recruit anymore, so I apologize. Our role, it's gonna get difficult, because now all of a sudden you've got this talent, and it goes back to who is that talent? Is that talent right for your company? And it not only goes by just the salary or clearances, culture. Right? There was an article out there just this past week that says, not every government employee will be or can be fit for your company, right? So I think our job is going to get a little bit more difficult, and so it's giving you almost a head start that, hey, go reach out and start building. We're a recruiter. We're supposed to be we're the salespeople, so it's hard to sell if you don't have your talent or your candidates lined up to present it for your leaders, right? So, and I would also say it's a great opportunity. Yes, if we have to cut, yes, we get it, but go get upskilled. You know, you have time, and for some of us, it's the compliance training that we have to take, right? Do what you need to do to show that you're still being productive. Yes, we are recruiters, we need to fill jobs, but we can also develop ourselves, develop the candidate pipeline right, and be more personable. We have time now, so we can be, and go help your internal talent as well, right? We're supposed to do this. So to me, right now, I say it's an opportunity for us to take care of ourselves as well as, take an opportunity to build for the program that's continued to go and push it to the right.
Any thoughts on? Yep, you're good. I did want to open up real quick for questions, just to pause real quick and see if anybody, Tommy.
I have a question for Dorion. So with the with the note taking, do you have to get consent of the candidate or to be in the note taking app, or how does that work?
Yeah. Yes. So you let the candidate know right out in the beginning that this session will be recorded, and make sure that they're okay with that, and just run from there.
Is that?
Yeah, and if it's if we're doing a Google Meet, we've done Google Meet, you can record and it'll let them know right at the top, managing recording, and you can let them know in the beginning as well.
You have it so that it's just over phone calls as well, or are they always like Google Meets, like some of the more popular ones that are out there?
Is it for a phone call? So you?
Like, can I just call someone and you have an app that'll plug into the call as well?
Yes, yeah. So you can do that via the phone call as well, because it'll record the conversation. And what I like about it the most is that it summarizes the conversation, and it also will give you action steps out of that conversation. So.
Do you feel like they have more hesitation when it comes time to giving their social, like to verify the parent?
We don't take any PII over the phone. So we have our FSO, our facility security officer, would manage the step when it comes to any PII. So we wouldn't need that, well, at least for our recruiting teams.
Like different conversation. It would be, we do it over the phone, or there's multiple ways, but I don't think it would be in that initial screening is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Different conversation.
Also, to stem off of that, because I'm big on the technology piece of things, not as advanced as you with the note-taking app, but the notes that you can search are huge, because I know all of you speak to 900 million candidates in a week, and you forget very easily, but you might remember one key point, one name. So I use a lot of note-taking apps like Physical Note, OneNote, all the different ones, to do the same thing, but searchable, because I forget, but I can reference it really quickly through searching, and you can't do that through a notebook. So learned that a long time ago, not as advanced as you with your recording. But I'm gonna be soon.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, I'm gonna skip my technology questions. I feel like we've talked a lot about that, unless you had something driving, like you just really wanted to talk about. But I think one thing, just because I love talking more on the metric side of the house, we're about to launch the Cleared Recruiting Survey, which I hope you will all take this year, so we can continue with our Cleared Recruiting Guide each year. But how do you measure the success of a recruiting program? Like, what metrics matter most to you? Like, what is the data story you're trying and want to tell?
Do you want to go first? Oh, me?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
of course. Of course they pick me.
You were chosen.
I'm the chosen one for this one. So I would say your normal time to fill, time to accept, right? But it depends on the program, really. I will talk about, for example, if it's an internal mobility, if we're looking at our employees who are looking for a change, they may not have the skill set that we're looking for. It's an 80% match that we talk about. And if it's a relatively new program, we may not want to measure our success based off of the placements that we made, but maybe our success is based off of how many interviews that these guys have gotten, right? So It all depends on what program we're talking about. For our internship program, one of the metrics that we're gonna take is how many interns came back to Leidos, and what percentage of interns took our that they wanted to convert full time. So a lot of what we do is it's a program based, but it goes back to there's always room to improve. So we do look at our recruiting process, and see where are the improvement. And it's normally, because our leaders don't know any better, the only 2 or 3 metrics that they know is how long did it take for us to fill the role, right? Yeah. And why is background check taking 14 days and not 7 days? Why can't we do this, right? So I think those are the ones that we will always have, but it also, we're looking at also the retention of employees. When we talked about a quality of hire, the referral program that we have, is it actually generating the quality hires? Are they staying longer with the company because they were referred versus somebody that we just reached out to? So my world is all about these metrics. We look for it, but it truly varies program by program, and what is it that we're trying to accomplish. And slowly it'll change, but it really is, for our leaders, it's, at Leidos, it is time to fill, time to accept, clearances, how long is it taking, and then really digging deep into where the opportunities for us are to improve.
I agree, but I think success looks different for every organization, right? So for a very large company, it's going to be very program. Like she said, that program manager that's managing, she cares more about why is their program not filled. And so within a smaller company, that we have a lot of visibility across all of the programs, and obviously CEO being very involved. I would say some of the things that we measure success on, or that are very important to us, is obviously all of our programs and positions being filled because it's revenue. But where are we capitalizing new business and forging new relationships is huge for us, because that's growth, like on contract growth or new programs, new relationships, and things like that. So I think success can be measured so many different ways, from the time to fill, conversion of source candidates to hire, retention. But it's who you ask within the organization is going to define it differently. So, it's a very open-ended question, a fun one, and the conversation changes between. No, I think it's a fun one because it changes between who you're talking to. So.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because if you think about the metrics, it's who are the metrics for? And for everyone in this room, if you were to think right now, what's your highest priority job requirement right now? Your highest priority job. Everybody think about it. Okay, you lock it in. You know what it is? Raise your hand. If you know what you're. All right. Who determined what was your highest priority? You. Okay. So for us, usually it's determined by our client, by our customer, based on what is their highest priority. And the reason I say that is because if I'm giving my customer a metric that matters to me, it may or may not matter to them. So knowing what their highest priority is for the business, and then tying our metrics around that. So I may be able to say our time to fill for these 50 recs is X, but all they really care about are these 2 jobs. And so giving your client, whoever you are supporting, those metrics, then it resonates. Oh, okay, this is how we're focusing on how we prioritize what's important to the business.
Awesome. Well, we've taken you right up to the very end. So thank you, the 3 of you. Cheers.